just
Well,
shop
the
and save.
time, because of,
Time savings?
yeah, if you're not doing traveling, then you're still on the job.
Yeah, great point, because boy, especially if you're global, it can take a day and a half to get to some places.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay,
More.
great.
The cost of office space.
Okay, yep. Great. Anything else?
Convenience.
Okay. Great.
I missed the discussion, but
Benefits of virtual teams.
you can work in your pajamas.
Okay.
Comfortable.
That's not your pajama.
Work comfortably.
Can you work by yourself?
You can work by yourself.
Well, or yeah, when you're not feeling well.
Well, interesting though, a lot of times we make the assumption about virtual teams that virtual teams mean people are working from home, which is not always the case. So sometimes there are virtual teams where you've got a sub team in India, and the other team is in the UK, and the other team is in New York, and they actually have office space, and they actually show up and work. So which has its own set of challenges and also benefits. But keeping that in mind that there are different kinds of virtual teams.
In our case, that we would all be working out of our separate offices.
Yes.
Not from home.
Yeah.
But I look at it, what I'm planning to do is going to allow us to get together more often because we're not wasting time on the travel and,
Yeah.
you know, the time is a big function. We can stay doing our normal job and it'll also contribute to this project, you know, the pieces that each
That's
of us
right.
need to contribute.
Yep. Okay. Great. Anything else that's not up here that you came up with? in
Well, we
terms
didn't
of-
come up with this, but under the convenience, it's also, you can have the off-hour type meetings. So if
Okay.
you've got an international meeting, and
Yeah.
you need somebody to meet at 6 o'clock in the morning, somebody else meets at 6 o'clock at night.
Yeah. Which may also, some of you may have also listed that as a potential pitfall.
Somebody's always awake, right?
Yeah, exactly. Anything else? Okay, I'm going to add one of my own here. Guess what I'm going to add?
Innovation.
Yeah. Why did I add innovation?
Well, if you're not working in the same workspace, you're not colored by the culture of that office or that environment.
Yeah,
So, you know, you can come from, again, different angles.
that's right. And actually, virtual teams can be a way of encouraging more diversity in your business. So I just recently moved back to the States about a year ago, and before that I'd been living in London working as a managing director for a global consulting firm. And so we had teams in Asia, in Singapore, in Beijing, and in India. And so, and teams that we formed on the ground there in those countries, and since I've left, they're now forming one in South America as well. But the influx of ideas in terms of different cultures was phenomenal. And we would occasionally see each other face to face, but just the opportunity to bring in different perspectives, cultural perspectives, was great.
Now, how did you communicate? It was all English?
It was all English, yeah. And that's another challenge of a virtual team. Now, English is the official language of business internationally, right? But that doesn't mean that everybody's great at it. So it can be another challenge. Any other benefits that you see out there that are missing from there? Yes.
Well, it could become a habit. It could become something ongoing, and that it works by itself and goes by itself.
Okay, so the benefit of that, of it being a habit or going by itself, flowing by itself is?
Well, it's, I mean, it keeps communication going. Just that, right?
Okay. Tell me how a virtual team keeps communication going.
Well, by working on certain project or service or product, depends on what they are focus on.
Okay,
Yes.
I mean, you could do that by IM,
yeah,
you know, instant messaging.
yeah,
I mean, it's one way, I mean, it's instant communication,
yeah,
you know, quicker than email.
yeah,
I think a lot of times businesses tend to self-segregate into silos. In other words, I'm in finance.
yes.
And so I talk to people in finance, and I don't really have that much to do with people in inventory management, purchasing,
Yep,
you know, all the other areas. And having a virtual team is going to make us sit down from time to time and look at this project that I'm going to be doing
yeah,
across disciplines.
yes,
And then what he's saying is that communication may continue even after the project
Yeah.
expires.
yeah. So
So a certain
that,
amount of,
that's a potential benefit. It may also fall over here, we'll talk about that in a minute, but that is, I can't read that. so-
12:40.
We have to finish at 12:40? Okay, so this is going to be an express train for your virtual teams. So I may just run through a lot of this, and happy to share the slides with you and send them to you as well. But yeah, that is a potential benefit. It's also a potential pitfall, because virtual teams can encourage silos. They can. But I think what some of you are hitting on with virtual teams is because sometimes when you're in the same physical location, it's easy to take that for granted and not to reach out to, you know, you can have virtual teams between the second and third floor of a company. I'm working with a client right now that is really true. Second floor is technology, first floor is business development, is creative, and boy, getting the two floors to talk to each other, it's like, really? So silos can form whether you're virtual or not. Sometimes with virtual, because you are virtual, you have to work a little harder to communicate, and that could cut down on that. So just to share with you some business case studies. So Northern Telecom saved upwards of $20,000 because they didn't, and somebody hit on that in terms of office space. They didn't need office space for individuals who were not in the office. IBM also eliminated physical offices and saved 40 to 60% per site annually. Increased productivity of virtual team members from 15 to 40%. US West, which is now Quest, it just, yeah, increased productivity by up to 40%. Hewlett Packard moved salespeople to a virtual workplace, and it doubled its sales.
Not anymore.
Well, no. Yeah, but a while back.
Like 10 years ago.
Oh, well.
That was the
They're really struggling now.
Yeah, they are really struggling. For different reasons, though. Not necessarily because of virtual teams.
No.
But, yeah, but they are. That's absolutely right. But just looking at some business case studies that can support the business argument for virtual teams. But let's look at the other side. So what did you come up with in terms of pitfalls?
I said a language barrier.
Okay, yeah, can be. And you know, interesting about this too is that even if everyone is speaking English, a couple of things that research has found. Number one is that sometimes just accents, and that's not language. That can be domestic accents. So boy, having lived in England for 4 years, I tell you, I really struggled with understanding some of those accents, some of those Northern England, Scottish accents. And people sometimes would respond to me like, what are you, stupid American? You don't understand what we're speaking? We're speaking English. And I would want to say, no, actually, you're not speaking English. You're not English. So that can just be accent. But also to language, another piece of research shows that frequently what can happen with people who are coming to English as a second language is that they will say they understand something because they feel embarrassed to say that they don't. And then misunderstandings occur. So I was doing some work a couple of years ago with Mars, you know, the Mars candy bars, and they had a site down in Mexico. And they were having a real problem between the Mexican team and the American team because and what we finally figured out, because I did some off-sites with them and with both teams, and they got both teams together, but finally the Mexican team was able to come forward and say, well, actually, we're struggling with understanding the manager. She talks so fast but they were afraid to admit that. And so all these misunderstandings were happening. So, yeah, great. What else?
Well, going along with the language, you've got facial expressions, body language,
Right.
sarcasm.
Mm.
So I'm going to write
Extended language.
lack of nonverbal cues.
Mm.
Right? And I don't know if you've heard the statistic that 93% of how our message is communicated, how it's interpreted, comes from the visual and the vocal. If you take the visual out, that piece of the puzzle becomes all vocal. 7% is content. So a great example of that are three of the most famous words in any language used. I love you. I could say, I love you. Or I could say, I love you. Or I could say, I love you. Three very different messages, all changed with my voice and my body language. So if you are not using telepresence, video conferencing, WebEx, Skype, you're not using those technologies, you're going to miss out on that. And to me, another analogy is, how many of you are sports fans in here? Okay, so think about the difference between going to a live sporting event, watching a baseball game live, versus watching it on TV, versus hearing about it on the radio, listening to the game on the radio, versus having someone IM you about each thing that happens. Yeah? Now, I don't know about you, but I love baseball and I love soccer. I hate to watch it on TV and forget about listening to it on the radio. I only like to go to live games. So, because you miss so much. And that is a pitfall with virtual teams. Good, what else? Yes?
I think following up with that, the personal